Meeting on a new special night, May 16th, 2022. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any public participation? Seeing none, we'll move on to Article 28, 119 South Bedford Street. So when we last left it, we were in the middle of a discussion about what to do with 119 South Bedford Street. And I think the only piece of new information that came in was the summary that John Denizio had written up earlier today. And I will just read it to set the context. The homeowner gave notice of intent to sell in March 22. We're talking about 119 South Bedford Street, which triggered a 30-day deadline for the town to exercise its right of first refusal. And this notice was given on April 22nd. The town has 90 additional days, 120 days total from the original notice for the town to move forward with one of the two options below: find a willing and eligible purchaser, or purchase a property for the maximum resale price, which could include assigning the purchase to the housing authority. If the town is unable to complete either of the options above, they would need to then they would need to be required to release the deed rider and allow the owner to sell the house at market price. The town would move to approve the listing price and sale price before releasing the deed rider. The town would receive any additional proceeds beyond the maximum resale price. The maximum affordable price of $340K was set at the time of this notice on the 22nd of April, and that was shared with the committee last week. So at town meeting, there are 5 options if the warrant article is approved, and those would be: the town select board can purchase the property for the maximum resale price and sell it as an affordable unit, or sell it to the housing authority, or sell it at market rate and release the deed rider, or take their time and figure out something else to do. If the warrant article is withdrawn or voted down, the options are: the town has until July to find a willing and eligible purchaser, or release the deed rider and allow the home to be sold at market price and receive the difference between the maximum resale and market price. The deed rider would not be released until the town receives the difference in price. Thank you, John, for that summary. Further discussion?
I have a question.
Please.
Thank you. I'm wondering about the mechanism for releasing the deed rider. Would we be able to force it up somewhere near the market price, or would the current owner be able to just give a sweetheart deal to whoever they choose to, because they can only benefit to the maximum of $340K?
I don't know, John might want to answer that, yeah.
Mr.
Done the
Denizio?
research.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. According to both our legal counsel and our expert affordable housing consultant that we use, the town has to approve both the listing and the sales price. So if it came back to the town to sell it only at the maximum allowable price, I doubt that the select board would approve that as a sales price.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had hopefully an easy question and 2 others. What's the dollar amount associated with this article? Is it $340K?
Mr. Sagarino?
We rounded it to $350,000 to account for any costs that may be associated with selling it,
Okay.
buying it, I mean.
So $350, okay. And I guess a couple questions probably for Eileen. Is Other than the difficulty of reselling the property if we decide to buy it and then not keep it, is there any downside that you're aware of to buying it and allowing us to have more time to decide?
No, and actually, these last few days has given me some time to think about things. And as I said last week, this whole process felt very rushed to me. And, I didn't think we had all the facts. So, over the last few days, I've thought about that, and I thought, you know what, we shouldn't give this up. And very honestly, I just didn't give the thought of a developer buying it and putting up a McMansion on that property. I don't think we talked about it, frankly, at the committee. So, with that discussion last week, and that was brought up, thinking about that, and thinking about, so maybe that's what we do. We spend, I don't know what, and that's sort of the question mark. Is it $25,000? Is it $10,000? Is it $75,000 to make it a comfortable home for someone to move in? Then let's do it. If that's what we're going to do. Sort of the PS to that is, so is that going to set a precedent for all the other homes, along that street? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But, I think that we should come up with a policy or something, the housing partnership, and maybe in conjunction with the select board, to figure out what we want to do with the other properties. But, no, I'm sort of more amenable to holding on to it and, and keeping it as an affordable house.
Okay, and then a final question maybe for the administration is, let's assume we do the bare minimum as Mike mentioned, we're sort of morally responsible for taking out the asbestos, even if we don't, legally have to. If we did the bare minimum of improvements like that, do we think there's any issue in turning it around at, a break-even price? Or is that relatively straightforward to do in the market today, do we think?
So, John, I think your question was, if we bought it for the maximum sale price and put a minimal amount of money in it, would we be able to adjust the maximum sale price?
Well, I'm just wondering, if we decide not to hold on to it, would there be any difficulty unloading it and breaking even?
If we decide not to hold on to it and sell it and not keep it as an affordable unit? There would be no risk, I would say.
Okay, all right.
Now we're talking about selling, we're only paying $340, putting something into it for a house that just got appraised for $585.
Okay, all right, that was my assumption. Thank you. All right, I guess I would suggest that, given that it seems like everyone seems to be agreeing that there wasn't a lot of time there's not quite enough time to resolve for sure what we want to do, and the downside of buying this and either doing something with it or reselling it seems pretty low. It seems like buying it and being able to have a little more time to decide is the right answer. So that's what I would recommend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just two questions. Did the select board vote for this as a board?
Yes.
Okay, and their vote was
3 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstained.
3-1-1, okay.
To do what? Sorry.
To bring the article to town meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
Nothing other than that. Just
okay.
right. no,
see where the
Okay.
Yeah,
chips
so
may fall.
all
at
they
town meeting.
voted on was the warrant article as published
As
for the
written,
TBD
yes.
money to buy it, right, to take the right of first refusal. And the second question is, so the real downside in this is if the improvements to make it marketable at all turn out to be $100K, you have the potential to lose that much money could go out the window, because when you recoup, if you then went to the open market and it sold for 500, you're now in it for 440, so you're recouping, you're getting less profit, I guess, return. That's the only downside that I see in the whole thing. And the upside is, and the partnership had me a little bit confused. I understand that there is a tendency these days, especially for condos are becoming somewhat attractive for certain purposes, more so than they were. And if the partnership could get in the business of good quality, affordable condos, that probably would be a good thing. But I don't think this is the best mechanism to try to get there. If it happens, great, but we should just put this on the street, try to get one more home out there, and if we can't, then you'll get at least most of your money back, and if we have these other options, then we can go explore them. That's the way I was tending that way the other night, but I couldn't get my thoughts fast enough and we were out of time. Does that make sense to the partnership?
Well, I was the only one to vote for it, so yeah, it makes a good sense to me. This is my argument is this, and this is a tangible, valuable asset to the town of Burlington, and to simply let it go because it's inconvenient or it's difficult,
Yeah.
or it doesn't make any sense to me. And to burden the seller, who have been lifelong Burlington residents, they've been there for 25 years, the husband was a 40-year town employee, to burden them to find a suitable seller to the town of Burlington, I think is unreasonable. We can easily find a suitable seller
Yeah, if
ourselves.
they're out there, we can find them.
So they can-
I do have a question, though, a follow-up question. So let's say the town does buy this house. Who ultimately is in charge of actually making the decision of what to do?
Stephen, what I'm asking the Ways and Means, I'm sorry, Steve, I got in trouble for saying,
Well, you're mad, that's all right.
I kind of lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
What I'm hoping town meeting will do tonight is approve buying the home, allowing this woman to move on with her life. I would additionally like the money to do the necessary asbestos abatement and modest updates to the home, and then come back in September and decide, let town meeting decide, give us 3 months to think about the best way to transfer this property, whether it's to a first-time home buyer, market rate, or, it'll give us a little time to
I guess
breathe.
my question was really, is that the partnership who would be thinking about the potential solutions that they would bring to town meeting, or?
I will work diligently with my partners. I got to tell you, this group has done some amazing work in the last 18 months, and I'm really proud of everything that we've accomplished. We just have a different opinion on this particular matter, so I'm certain we can resolve our differences, and between now and September, come up with 2 or 3 options for a town meeting to consider.
Okay. No, my question was just, what would be the process? That's effectively what I was asking. Okay. Ms. Sickler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I agree with Mike over here that we want to keep that in our portfolio, but for the rest of us, and again, the vote was 5-1 to allow the current owner to sell it, again, it didn't feel thoughtful. And so because it felt rushed and it didn't feel thoughtful, and because there were, these open items, questions, and frankly, things I think that we didn't even know to ask, I just didn't think it was in the town's better interest to hold on to it. But I think there's a longer runway here, that we can decide what to do with it. But anyway, that was the sort of genesis of what I was pushing for in the partnership committee. And yes, I think the committee has done a lot of good work. I think it's also important to have full disclosure and transparency among all the members. So
Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a point of clarification, isn't it true that that the decision rests with the select board as to what to do with the property? Isn't that true? I mean, they're just looking for funding for several of the possible options, but and it sounds like if town meeting provides the funding, they'll have a wider range of options for when they do make a decision. But I'm hearing the discussion talk about coming back to town meeting in September, and I'm unclear why that would be the case. So to the administration, is the ultimate decision on the board, on the select board?
I believe it is. I'm, as a courtesy to town meeting, suggested to the town administrator, if the article is passed tonight, that we will come back, report, and seek guidance as to how to transfer the property.
I agree with the way Selectman Runyon put it. It's select board's decision. But if that were stated at town meeting that they would return in September with the options, then we would follow through on that.
Thank you. Carrie and then Sonia, sorry.
No problem.
I'm just, as another member of the committee, I wanted to sort of echo a little bit of what Eileen was saying, in that we have been able to get a little more information over the past week. There's still some unanswered questions for me about around like the actual interest of the housing authority and some things like that. But I think ultimately, I can definitely get behind the idea of hanging on to the house and try to figure out what to do. I do still have reservations around the fact that we may end up putting more money into it than we'd like. But if we have the support of both Ways and Means and town meeting, that this is an investment and that people value hanging on to the unit as a unit of affordable housing, and they know that it's going to be a somewhat risky endeavor, and we did struggle to sell 117, so we might struggle even more to sell this one. Then I'm fine with us undertaking that. As Mike said, we will, as a committee, do everything we can to make sure we find an eligible buyer for it. But it is definitely still, I think, a little bit of a risky undertaking.
Thank you. Sonia, sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, so the select board took a position to put it on the warrant, but they did not take a position on how they feel about the purchase
Correct,
as the stewards of the land.
correct.
No comments. Okay, so I will comment on that. This is a no-brainer in my mind. First of all, there is no risk. I mean, all due respect, there is no risk at $350,000, even if you put $100,000 into this house. A little, even if you put a.
There is a risk of finding an eligible buyer. Find someone who qualifies at that 80% AMI. Sure, if we were on an open market, there would be no problem finding a buyer, but we're looking for a first-time affordable housing purchaser, and we only had 3 qualified buyers for 117 South Bedford. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, I hear you. 3 qualified buyers is 3 qualified buyers. We're you're giving somebody a house. I hear you. What I'm saying is, as a community, there is no risk to buying a purchase of $350,000 and putting $100,000. If you cannot find a qualified buyer, then you can sell it to the open market. I promise you, for more than $450,000. So there is no risk to the town on that, as far as I'm concerned. The second part is, Selectman Runyon, I am behind you 110%. Affordable housing is something that we have spoken about in a community for as long as I can remember being involved in this community. We stand before other developers when they're putting in projects, and we tell them how we want and believe in affordable housing for Burlington. I believe that a house that we are already retaining a right to should not be released without the option of trying to find somebody to be able to purchase property. If the town cannot find somebody, even if it's 3 people, if we one person who is willing to do it, and I can tell you because I'm in this day in and day out, there are a lot of people who cannot afford to enter into Burlington at this point. And if we allow somebody to enter into Burlington to be able to live in this community, then we've done our job as far as I'm concerned. On a real estate perspective, there is no risk in spending $350,000 on a half-acre lot and putting in money into it, because if for whatever reason, is it a half-acre lot?
Just
No.
something a little less than that. about
16,000 square feet.
There is no risk still, I promise you on that, on doing that, because if for whatever reason it doesn't meet the criteria and you choose as a board to move it along and sell it to the open market will pay you back. I would hope that this community would do their best to allow an affordable, it would be presented as an affordable option. And if it even costs this town a portion of money to do that, I think, given what we've always said to developers when they're before the planning board, and given what we've always developed and said, we are saying that we are trying to allow people the opportunity to live in Burlington. And that is exactly what affordable housing is meant to do. So in my humble opinion, I think that this one's a no-brainer. We retain the right to do that. I guess my only question to the administration is, if in fact we choose, if this warrant passes, and I hope it does at town meeting this evening, do we have that 30 days, for example, until June 30th or July 30th, was it? Was that the date, Mr. Chairman?
I think it was like the 22nd of July.
So if in fact if in fact we find somebody by then, can that transfer of property happen without the town getting involved, or do we have to take ownership one way or another? Selectman Runyon,
Sonia, there's asbestos in the house.
okay?
Okay. I really want that opportunity for,
Knowing.
I don't, you're not gonna, put a first-time home buyer who's already cost burdened, into a home that needs that much attention.
I understand.
Respectfully ask that we pay the seller what she is rightfully due, 35. Allow us opportunity, a few months to get in there, get rid of the asbestos, make some modest updates, and then come back to you in September with 2 or 3 different options as to how to transfer the property. That may mean adjusting area median income threshold from, say, 80%, which it is currently, to 100 or 120, whatever it takes to get that person qualified who wouldn't otherwise qualify to have a nice 3-bedroom, solid ranch-style home here in Burlington.
I'm with you 100%. I think there really is, it's a no-brainer to me. I mean, this one's a no-brainer, and I understand that it could cost the town some money at some point, but if we are stating that as a thought process for us as a community, if we have a housing opportunity to allow somebody who can't normally afford to enter into Burlington to do that, and if that costs the town a little bit of money, we've spent money on other things, folks. So this one doesn't bother me even in the slightest, and I want to comfortably say that if all goes bad and you have to sell it on the open market, your money's going to come back to you. This is a no-brainer to me. So I commend you, Selectman Runyon, for stepping up to the plate. I hope the board follows suit with you on when it comes time for us to talk about it, because as stewards of the land, they really should take a stance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. So I have 4 people, Doug, and then Chris, and then David, and then Roger.
So
Quickly, a couple of things. One, I think you touched on it last week. I just want to make sure I understand. If we purchase it, which I think we should, and put money into it, and say you have to put $100,000 into it, does that put it over the price that a person with the income that would keep them at affordable housing then could get an approval for?
If we stay at that 80% of area median income, then yes.
Okay.
Have to adjust.
But we have the option of, do we have the option of adjusting that?
Yes, we can go up to 150.
And it's not as affordable, I get that. So then you're kind of in a pseudo affordable. I don't know if we want to get in the middle of moderately affordable. But, and then second, I love the idea that the last house was purchased by a teacher, I think a local teacher.
Yeah.
Is it just like we can for some of the other programs? Can you modify it and say it's for a town employee? It's for, can you do that to help?
FHA gets, I think the FHA requires it to be open to anybody.
Okay. It'd be nice.
We have some wiggle room. We can be a town resident or.
I mean, we're getting to the point where you have firefighters, police officers, teachers who can't live in the community they work in, which is kind of nice to have a percentage of those folks living here. So, all right, thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I gotta wholeheartedly agree with Sonia on this one. I don't see any need for us to reduce housing stock, especially when we're trying to continue to push the need for affordable housing here. The amount of risk, I'm with Sonia as well on that. I don't see that. We had 3 candidates for the last house. 3 is 3. 3 is not 0. If it was 0 for months and months, I could see some concern there. But we had 3 candidates. 1 ended up being a town employee. Huge bang for our buck there. And even at 450, we're still roughly 300,000 with a going house. Entry houses right now in Burlington. I don't see the need for us to reduce our stock if this is where our investment wants to go. So I see this, just like Sonia said, perfectly worth all of our money and be able to step to the plate and say, yes, we do care about affordable housing here in Burlington. We need to do better, but we're not going to backtrack. Thanks.
David?
Yes, echo the same point. In just getting rid of it and deciding not to go through and allowing the seller just to sell it, it takes all the control away from us. By us buying it, we have all the control. So we either do the work that we're going to invest in affordable housing, which I think the town needs to do, and I truly believe this needs to stay affordable, or if it becomes unmanageable and we want to restock some funds in that affordable housing stock, then we sell it at going market, which then there is no risk. And whatever excess money that we're controlling, we put into the affordable housing fund. Why I'm wholeheartedly in agreement that this is what should be done. I'm a little troubled with the process here, because as someone mentioned earlier, we do have other properties, other houses that fit this deed restriction. So what do we know right now? We know that the seller supplied us with an appraisal that said this is what the market is. We've done our analysis based upon what 80% of AMI would be and set a base price. And we've had, I guess, an inspector go in and take a look at the property, but we have no idea what it's going to cost. People start bantering around. We need to we need to get the asbestos out, but we have no idea what this is going to cost. That's troubling, especially if there are other properties that may come down the road. I think the process needs to change so that we can get on top of this. At the property next door, 117, we knew it was basically gutted. The sellers just didn't treat it, and the thing had to be redone totally. This one, the appraisal says that the property's in very good condition. Yes, there may be some asbestos, and yes, the balance is what is the amount of the improvements that we need to do in order to keep this affordable. The balance is how much money we need to spend, and having an idea from a contractor or someone that's looked at it, that we can kind of look at it ourselves as a committee to say, this is how much money we're going to need to invest in it. I'm not saying the investment is invalid, but we're shooting in the dark right now. We don't know. I want that process to change if it happens. So whatever can be done, I'm certainly supportive.
I think that's what the time buys us, is to do our due diligence properly and then come to the good business decision. Roger.
Yeah, I don't want to get too distracted from what appears to be, we're getting close to consensus here. So a few comments out. I think it makes a lot of sense to buy it. I think we should approve, some number, maybe 100K over the selling price so that the funds are available to make renovations. I think I would suggest, so this is a recommendation to town meeting, that we ask the administration not to spend the money until they've actually determined what they think the future is. Because I think putting money into a house and then turning around and selling it on the open market so some developer can turn it down and turn it into something else means we lose some money. But, exercising the right of refusal, taking possession of it, opens up all the possibilities. So I think we should move forward on that basis. But that's where I would go.
Mr. Runyon and then Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to address David's question about the estimates that we received that came from our building inspector. He did an on-site inspection, so I feel reasonably comfortable with his estimate of between 75 and 100,000 in asbestos abatement and modest improvements to make it saleable.
David?
Those improvements, Mike.
Dave, he mentioned it. It's, look at the houses, they're 60 years old. It's original kitchen. He's recommending there's some areas of the drywall that with some holes or some dings in it. It needs paint, of course. Will require new flooring, and it's a very, very small bathroom. Recommends a new vanity and maybe some loose tiles in there. I didn't look at it myself, but we're talking modest improvements so that someone can move in there and begin living.
Like we see on a lot of our backup, again, having backup would be good. Again, the inspector is looking at it under what lens is he looking through it? What is he looking to do? How much improvements need to get made versus should be made versus, again, whatever. There's a budget that can be spent anywhere. So I'm agreeing that work may need to be done to the property, and especially the abatement of the asbestos. But again, this is a first-time home buyer house. We all know what we did on our first-time home buyers houses, and what this doesn't have to be brand new condition.
No, because he said the roof is in good condition, the exterior of the home is fine, it's all interior repairs and updates. The heating equipment is brand new. We're not looking at major renovations like we were at the house next door.
Ed?
Thank you. So I'm a little ambivalent on this. I think there is risk. There's a risk of spending more than you intended. Maybe I need some help from you guys, but I can't get anyone to quote me a price on work on the house for less than $100,000. So I think we're gonna spend money, and I think that we're gonna lose something as stewards of the land. We're gonna lose whatever we put into it, and we're gonna also spend the difference between what we sell it for and the economic value. But I think that the economic value on the market is for a buildable plot. If somebody's gonna buy that, tear it down and build a McMansion. And I am all for letting a plot go to its highest use. But since there seems to be a dedication to not letting that eventuality happen, I think, you know, it's all gonna work out in the same ballpark anyway. But since no matter what we do to provide affordable housing, it's economically equivalent to giving a subsidy. Subsidy is the difference between, you know, what we're selling it for and what we could sell it to a developer for. It seems to me that when a buildable plot for a single family house goes for upwards of $600,000, and affordability is at about $340,000, single family homes are not affordable. So I wonder if this is a good strategy for providing affordable housing, and I very much look forward to the study and the strategy document so that we can decide if this is really a sustainable way to provide affordable housing. So I think it's going to end up a wash given the constraints that some of which we've put on ourselves and some we've gone to the market. But you know, I think we need to think hard and be prepared for these decisions next time.
Ms. Ellis?
Steal your theater. Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing me. Shabby Ellis, town meeting member. I've been attending most of, not all of the Housing Partnership Committee meetings. And I respect all the work that they've really been doing lately. I had a couple, this is the financial end of this, so I'll ask the financial questions. And you're saying that there's not a risk. What is the funding source for the $350,000?
Would be coming from the Housing Partnership Fund, so it would.
Additional funds that would be spent to upgrade the house. Where would that come from?
Same place.
So you have 9 more houses like this. You have a fund currently of $1 million, somewhere around $1 million, and you can spend $350, maybe $450 on one house, of which we don't have a housing needs assessment that says 3-bedroom homes are what we need for affordable housing. So I caution you, I think there is a risk. And I think that some of the confusion is complicated. In real estate sells, you also find a buyer, whether it's an affordable buyer or a market rate buyer. But we don't really know if it should be an affordable house. And so those are my questions. You're going to take more than a third of the fund on one particular property. There's 9 more of them, and they'll probably or potentially be coming forward.
I think at this point, what we're trying to do is buy us the time with the $350,000 to evaluate our options. If we decide at some point that, you know, this housing type doesn't make sense for us, we can then put it back on the market and at least recoup those costs. So essentially, we're just locking up $350,000 as an opportunity cost for something else to come in.
50, I think, was it Roger who mentioned maybe something about more of that? I would caution that.
Understood, but then there's the $100,000 that potentially would have to go into that house, and that money would be at a higher risk because we don't necessarily know if we could get it back in terms of if we were to sell it to somebody with who needs the affordable housing, because you know whatever we set that market rate at based on the percentage of AMI would determine how much of that we would get back. Make it.
Certainly, I think a policy, and again, if this is gonna buy you time to buy you a policy about what we're gonna do about those or about affordable houses in general, you know, maybe that's what needs to be happened, but I just wanted to let everyone think about that you're taking, you know, potentially a third of this money that we don't really have any kind of plan for at the moment, for one particular home. So, thank you.
Thanks. Megan?
Thanks, Steve. I just want to speak in support of this and just clarify, how many single-family homes do we have in our affordable housing portfolio? Did I, 9, was that
There's 12 on that stretch of 12 South Bedford Street.
12 total?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's important to keep single-family homes. Well, I find that condo buildings are also a very appropriate option. You know, children deserve a yard to play in. It's a completely different experience to grow up in a single-family home than a condo, and people should have the opportunity to make that choice for themselves. And I support keeping this in the portfolio and looking towards the next town meeting to discuss what the further plans are, future plans. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jaya?
I'm in agreement of keeping this house and then taking it through to the next town meeting and see what our options are. I'm curious to know what is the status of the remaining houses? Does it matter what we do with this house? It's going to affect the remaining 8 or 9 houses in that complex or street?
Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, Steve, thank you. So again, these were former military homes that were declared surplus back in the mid-90s, okay? Town picked them up at a relatively small price. Almost all of them are occupied by the original buyers, and they're all been there for 25 years now. They're all, I'm certain that these are gonna start falling like blocks because folks are now, you know, they're in their 60s and they're making some lifestyle changes. So we're going to be seeing more of these. Trust me, I already know one of the owners is currently on our waiting list at Grandview, and she informs me that as soon as her name comes up, she'll be the next one. So absolutely, this is certainly a litmus test as to what we're going to be doing going forward. We're going to see more and more of these over the next 5 to 10 years. I would love to get some sort of something in place. I happen to personally think that they'd be better as rental units, but again, let's you know, cross that bridge when we come to it. But yes, there's more to come.
Ms. Sickler?
Thank you, Mr. Warren. So I agree with a couple of the comments Mr. Tate saying about process. I mean, I think that's very important, and we didn't and we don't have it now. But I think it really needs to happen, especially as Mike is saying, you know, with the advent of other people coming forward. And Mr. Parsons, you know, in terms of the economic value, I mean, and there is risk, and the risk is, yeah, you can sell it, and someone comes in and makes, you know, builds a McMansion. So that to me is the risk. I'm more interested, again, getting back to the process. So who's going to be responsible as a general contractor? You know, hiring all these people, overseeing, you know, whenever that starts. I mean, Mike was I think ostensibly the GC on 117, and that doesn't make sense for anybody. So how does that work? Does the administration hire these people and oversee them, or how's that work?
Mr. Segarino?
Well, I think, you know, we don't have an affordable housing construction division, so it's gonna get pieced together much in the same way through the work of volunteers, through the work of the partnership, through the work of town staff when they're available, to try to make it work like we did on 117.
Is this an opportunity to use Shawshene students as well?
As a GC.
Not as a GC, but for labor.
Sometimes, but it does get a little bit tricky. They're there to learn, so they're much better to work on projects where there's less of time is of less of an essence. I think they worked on the Grandview project, and there was some difficulties in slowing that down for a decade or so. So decade. Blame it all on the Shawshene kid.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So we're running out of time, and
Right,
as much as I'd like to keep going around and around, can we find some common ground, some wording that we can propose as the motion to be used at town meeting? And I mean, there are a bunch of things I think we can figure out in the future. But at the moment, we need a distinct statement of purpose. Town meeting can use you as a basis upon which to approve whatever, 420, whatever the number is, based on the sales price.
Roger, I would like the committee and town meeting to authorize up to 435,000. I don't see just coming up with the 335 tonight and letting the house sit there vacant for 3 months throughout the sticky, humid summer, possibly falling into even further disrepair. I'd like that 3 months to make the necessary repairs and come back in September with the house that's ready to move in and some viable, well thought out options for transfer.
Just as a heads up, the moderator may rule that out of order, given the printed amount was 350. And I think historically they would allow you to move it down, but they may rule that that's too significant of a change to move it up. So be aware of that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's
So my question on that, Mr. Chairman, is if in fact it's what is the number?
It's 350
350.
in the warrant.
And if in fact there's money that either is donated or can on a building like that, Paul, that is now owned by the town, can work be donated there, in fact? Or does it have to be done through the public bidding process like everything else?
It has been donated.
Okay, so it can be donated, because if in fact the moderator.
Long evening, Sonia.
Yeah.
Moderator would rule that out of order, then, if we move that number, my question would be, can we in fact then work on if we could piecemeal either through different people that could help it? And to David's point, we have to be realistic. We're not gutting a house and rebuilding a kitchen. We're giving people a first-time home buyer opportunity, which means we are removing whatever's detrimental to them, and then we are trying to bring it to a point where it's a livable place that is in good condition. Finding painters and things like that to donate time, I'd be willing to step up to the plate to find that with you.
Paul?
I would just add that over the years, affordable housing funds have been used for this type of purpose without town meeting approval.
Okay.
So basically, this vote is for town meeting approval to purchase the house, I believe is what the purpose of the article was. But over the course of time, affordable housing funds have been used for affordable housing purposes without town meeting vote on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I would also, I guess my last point is I would also like to see a little bit of forethought and process put in place before we rush to start, like, any sort of major work. I understand we don't want it to sit for 3 months, that's fine, but I also don't want, like, work to start, like, unless we have some kind of thought process and sort of policy behind what we plan to do with it. I would like to have those discussions before, like, major work really starts.
In the interest of time, can I make a motion to approve for 350K?
Second.
As written in the warrant?
Yes.
Yes, you can make that motion. It's been seconded. Okay, any further discussion? Jaya, your hand's still up. I'm assuming you're all set.
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, okay, great. David?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Yes.
Mike? He's not here. He's not here. Roger?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Ed? No. Jaya?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Don?
Yeah.
Chair votes aye, that's 12-1-0. All right,
Move to adjourn to the high school.
move to adjourn to the high school. Is there a second?
Second.